Former U.S. Pentagon officials warn of extreme strain on civilian-military ties. Labor Day weekend shootings leave at least 16 dead in the United States. Some U.S. Muslims have negative stereotypes about themselves. Israel reveals secret document about bombing Syrian nuclear site. Climate change could devastate the Mena region, the study warns. 6 Gulf states warn Netflix over content violating Islamic values. From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight. On Tuesday, a group of former U.S. defense secretaries and retired generals warned of an exceptionally challenging environment facing the Pentagon. The open letter, signed by 8 former defense chiefs and 5 retired generals, cited strains between the military and civilian society. They wrote about divisiveness and polarization that led to the first election in over a century, when the peaceful transfer of political power was disrupted and in doubt. The letter, published by the War on Rocks website, also reflected on the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Those wars, they said, ended without all the goals satisfactorily accomplished. Signatories included defense secretaries who served under former President Donald Trump, like Mark Esper and James Mattis, as well as every retired Joint Chiefs chairman since 2001. Mass shootings left at least 16 people dead and 47 others injured during Labor Day weekend across the United States, according to Gun Violence Archive. The nonprofit watchdog recorded 12 shootings between September 3rd and 5th. The deadliest shooting was in Minnesota on Sunday, where 3 people were killed and 2 others injured at a home in St. Paul. In Ohio's East Cleveland City, 1 person was killed and 10 people were injured overnight on Saturday. 2 people were killed in a mass shooting in Norfolk, Virginia, Sunday morning. And another shooting claimed the lives of 2 men and injured 2 others in Chicago Sunday night. On Labor Day, 2 people were killed and 4 others were injured in a shooting in North Philadelphia, authorities said. CNN has hired John Miller, the former head of the New York City Police Department's intelligence unit. Miller was a television reporter in the 1990s when he interviewed John Gotti and Osama bin Laden. More recently, he was a senior police official who claimed that there's no evidence that the NYPD ever spied on Muslim New Yorkers. This is despite the fact that extensively documented evidence shows that the NYPD did so with help from the CIA. Miller, who has been named CNN's chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst, said he was proud to join the network. He said covering the news, getting it right, and delivering it in a straightforward way has never been more vital in the American public. On Thursday morning, Steve Bannon surrendered to authorities. He's expected to face charges in New York State related to raising money to fund construction of a wall along the southern border of the United States. The former chief of staff to ex-President Donald Trump will likely plead not guilty when arraigned later this day. His attorney, Robert Costello, told CNN. Bannon was charged by federal prosecutors in 2020. He and 3 others are accused of defrauding donors in the border wall fundraising effort. They raised more than $25 million for it. A new survey by the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding shows that while Islamophobia has declined among other American religious groups, it has increased amongst Muslims. The Washington, D.C. and Dearborn, Michigan-based think tank's Islamophobia Index measures a group's endorsement of anti-Muslim stereotypes. It noted American Muslims scored 26 on the index out of 100, higher than many other religious groups. Jews scored 17 on the index, Protestants were at 23, the religiously unaffiliated at 22. Those who scored higher than Muslims on the Islamophobia index were white Catholics at 28 and white evangelicals at 30. Iram Ikramullah, research project manager and the report's co-author, said minority groups can internalize negative stereotypes about their community. That can have a huge effect on mental health, feelings of shame, embarrassment, and self-identity, she added. A Malaysian businessman at the center of the biggest U.S. corruption scandals in Navy history escaped house arrest weeks before his sentencing. Leonard Glenn Francis has been on the run from his San Diego home in California since Sunday, U.S. officials said. On Monday, Omar Castillo, Supervisory Deputy U.S. Marshal, told the San Diego Union Tribune that Francis cut off his GPS monitoring ankle bracelet. Also known as Fat Leonard, Francis is the alleged mastermind behind the corruption scandal. CBS News reports that in 2015's plea agreement, Francis identified 7 U.S. Navy officials who have accepted bribes. He also acknowledged paying off officials with hundreds of thousands in cash, as well as luxury goods worth millions. In exchange, the officers gave him classified information. They also redirected military vessels to ports that were lucrative for his ship servicing company. Francis's sentencing date is set for September 22nd. Several U.S. security agencies are conducting a high-profile manhunt. Israel reveals a secret document about bombing Syrian nuclear sites. Details come after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. Israel revealed a secret document from 2002 that helped the bombing of a purported Syrian nuclear site in 2007. According to a military statement on September 6, 2007, Israeli warplanes struck a Syrian nuclear reactor in the Deir ez-Zor area in a mission code named Outside the Box. The secret document included a warning from the Israeli military intelligence that Syria was attempting to begin pursuing a nuclear program. The document said that secret projects were being conducted within the framework of the Syrian Atomic Energy Commission, the Times of Israel newspaper reports. The army also published photos and videos of targeting the Syrian nuclear site and photos before and after the bombing. Thousands of Indonesian workers rallied in front of the parliament in the capital Jakarta on Tuesday to protest the government's recent decision to raise fuel prices. Organized by trade unions, protesters opposed the 30% price hike in Southeast Asia's largest economy. Said Iqbal, president of the Confederate of Indonesian Trade Unions, said protest will continue until the government reduces prices. He threatened that 5 million workers would stop production. Fuel prices typically peak in late November or early December. He said the unions hope that parliament members accept the demands of the workers. Deputy Finance Minister Sauhasil Nazara said that the government is determined to maintain the stability of commodity prices. He said the hope is to increase in energy prices will not affect the prices of other commodities. Frost & Sullivan's recent analysis found that the halal economy is experiencing an upward trend as demand for halal products from Muslims and non-Muslim nations increases. Factors driving the halal industry include favorable population demographics, government policies, and private sector initiatives. Growing non-Muslim demand for halal foods will be driven by its association with safe and healthy eating, the analysis found. Meanwhile, halal fashion and tourism is also likely to find increasing acceptance amongst more conservative, non-Muslim consumers, the report says. The global halal economy is likely to see significant growth, reaching $4.96 trillion by 2030, up from $2.3 trillion in 2020, the analysis shows. A group of Gulf Arab states have threatened Netflix with legal action if it continues to broadcast content that contradicts Islam. Saudi state media said the offensive material centered on shows depicting sexual minorities. A joint statement by the Saudi media regulator and the 6-member Gulf Cooperation Council did not identify the material. It referred to content that contradicts Islamic and societal values. Netflix officials were urged to remove the content, including materials directed at children, per the statement. The streaming platform did not immediately respond to the threat of legal action. The Gulf Cooperation Council, headquartered in the Saudi capital Riyadh, includes Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. In the UK, a National Crime Agency officer accused of making offensive remarks about Muslims was sacked unfairly, according to an employment tribunal. Abdi Brooks made the comments at a training session led by Abrar Javed, a Muslim community leader in Rotherham. The tribunal said that the intelligence officer's conduct contributed to her dismissal, which it ruled was unfair due to procedural failures during the process. Brooke was awarded more than $7,000 in compensation. The tribunal heard in 2020 the crime agency summarily sacked Brooke for making the remarks during a training session in Sheffield. The session focused on best practices for arresting suspects and searching homes where Muslim women were present. Climate change could have a devastating effect on millions living in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East, scientists have warned. An international team of scientists said temperatures are rising nearly twice as fast in the region as the global average. It could see an overall warming of up to 5 degrees Celsius or more by the end of the century, according to a report by the Cyprus Institute. That temperature spike would be almost twice what is anticipated in other areas of the planet and faster than any other inhabited parts, the group said. The report was prepared by the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry and the Climate and Atmosphere Research Center of the Cyprus Institute. It will be submitted at the United Nations Climate Change Conference to be held in Egypt in November. Charles succeeds as King of United Kingdom as his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, passes. Britain's longest-serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, died at the age of 96, Buckingham Palace said on Thursday. Prince Charles, who became the king, will be called King Charles III. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment on Somalia. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back. To discuss the situation of drought in Somalia, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Hena. If something happens in Ukraine, instantaneously the whole world knows. But in Somalia, there is a famine, and in the United Nations is elected to call famine. To prepare for this analysis, I read a report, and here's a person who was visiting. And she talked to a Somali person in Somalia. And I'm quoting here, "If I stay, I will end up dying here. But if I go and take my chances, I also may die along the way. And if I reach there, I'm not sure whether I will still get enough help. Every decision is terrible," he said. "So let me just pick one." To discuss with this situation in Somalia, we have with us Professor Abdi Samatar. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Shukran jazeelan.
Professor Samatar is chair of the Department of Geography, Environment, and Society at the University of Minnesota. Please share with us, what are you hearing about what's happening in Somalia?
Thank you very much, sir, Imam. And, I came back from Somalia about a month ago. I'm back in Minnesota presently. I used to be the chair of the department, but I did my service and now I am just a professor in the department. What I saw and what I am hearing now is that the rains failed over the last 2 years. Everybody knew that. Somalia occupies that part of the planet which is susceptible to droughts. That itself is not a surprise. So although we can blame droughts on what's happening today, I would say to you that since drought is part of the common climatic systems of this region, it's not the real cause of the famine. The real cause of the famine is a government in that country that has no capability to provide for its people, an international community that has been totally oblivious to the concerns of ordinary people, particularly farmers and rural people, and nomads and herdsmen and women. And so it's really a combination of the irresponsibility of political systems, whether it's Somali or international, and the climatic changes that are taking place. That is playing havoc with the lives of probably about 5 to 6 million Somali people who are subject to this. The population of the country is about 15 million people.
So almost half of the population is at risk in that way.
That's absolutely correct. And I wrote a piece for the sort of a TV Al Jazeera about almost 10 and a half years ago. There was another famine then. And the title of that paper I wrote for them was called The Genocidal Politics of the Somali Famine. And it's as if that same scenario is being played over and over again today. There's enough food in the world. Somalis can grow enough food. They have the longest coastline in the main continent of Africa, so there's plenty of fish on their coasts. But the capacity to use those resources to save them for the rainy day has been the failure of the so-called Somali government and the international community that has been unable to assist Somalis to help themselves there.
Now, the United Nations on Monday said that famine is at the door and is expected to occur between October and December. So there is no surprise there. So why the United Nations and other institutions in the world are failing people here?
The United Nations is actually wrong on this score. The famine is not on the door, it's inside the house. And people have been dying for several months now. But the politics of famine between the Somali government, the UN, and the rest of the international community is such that they don't want to sort of be the purveyors of bad news too early, but not providing that information early to the international community and others who care about saving lives of human beings across the world entails people dying long before they announce that the famine has arrived at the door. So the country is in a famine today. It's not at the door. It's inside the country. People have been dying for several months now, if not longer. And so it behoves the United Nations, the international community, if you like, the Muslim world for that matter, to come to the aid as urgently as tomorrow, if we can.
You know, the article I was reading, and it was talking about a aid worker who say, I heard of mothers who left some of their children to save other children. So it seems very horrible situation in which what benefit EU or the United Nations has to ignore? I mean, how do they benefit by not saying that it's famine?
Well, 2 days ago, I was talking to a colleague of mine who works for the Irish Community Service, who is in the country in Somalia. And he told me that the negotiations between the so-called international community and the Somali government was such that if they declare there is famine, the Somali government might lose control of the place. And so this negotiation that's taking place between the Somali government and the international community is oblivious to a mature crisis in which people have been dying by the hundreds over the last few months. Because these people are, in a sense, protected from seeing human lives, children, mothers, elderly, young men and women perishing on the roads as they try to flock from the countryside to Mogadishu in order to save themselves. Exactly the kind of a mother that you were talking about at the beginning of the show, which said that, if I stay, I will die. If I go, I may die on the road. If I get there alive, I may not get the help necessary. This help should have been here a year ago, not now, not tomorrow.
Professor Samatar, when you visited, you just came back. Were you able to visit the areas where famine is, or those areas are not accessible?
Some of those, as an individual, those areas are not accessible to me because Al-Shabaab, the so-called terrorist organization, controls many of those regions in the country. So our audience should understand, our listeners should understand that a significant proportion of the country is actually outside the control of the Somali government. It's under the control of Al-Shabaab. And the Somali people could have liberated themselves over a decade or more ago if the international community provided them the resources to develop their security systems and military resources to liberate the country. So that would have facilitated people getting access to food today. But since much of the country is not controlled by the Somali government, it's not accessible to anybody except those who are able to negotiate with Al-Shabaab. So that's the first thing to note. The second thing to note is that the vast majority, not a vast majority, a significant proportion of the people who are victims of this crisis have already come to Mogadishu and the neighborhoods around the city. And so one is able to see them in town, literally trying to keep body and soul together.
Professor Samatar, how much this factor plays in people not paying attention that Somalia has always been in the news for one problem or the other. So people think it's a chronic problem, government and terrorism and all that, and let's forget about it. Do you think there is some of that element in play here?
There is an element of that. I mean, I'm a geographer by training, and I have been around the country for many, many years. I've been presently there for the last year and a half. There is absolutely no need for Somalis to go hungry. The country has enough resources, is properly utilized. But first and foremost, the security of the country should be ensured so that merchants can move around delivering food to be bought and sold. Secondly, the two rivers of the country, one of them has dried up because of climate change and the lack of rains in highland Ethiopia. But nonetheless, both of those two rivers occupy a substantial proportion of the country, which is quite fertile, that can not only produce enough grains for the local population in the country, but actually Somalia can be an exporter of food if those resources are properly utilized. I can also tell you, sir, that over the last 25 to 30 years, something over $10 billion of fish has been stolen from the Somali coast by international pirates, not Somali pirates, international pirates. The fishing fleet of the world has been scavenging on the Somali coast for almost 3 decades, and nobody has been able to stop that. If those resources were spared for the Somali people, we wouldn't be where we are today in the country.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Samatar, for your time. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Bless you.
Back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid, for reflecting on that dire situation. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.